I think I would like to see him fight Charlo, somebody on another side. I want to see a little something else,
something different,
little different kind of opponent. You know, I want to see something.
Canelo wins that by knockout.
Hell yeah! I think he knocks out Charlo. Charlo's a great fighter though, so you got to be careful because Charlo's strong, hungry. You know, he's a guy that wants to win, and you know, Canelo's gonna have to bring it out himself to knock him out. But I think he does win.
I just truly believe, like, if you're going to call yourself pound for pound #1 in the world, you should have every single top name that you have defeated. I have never, like, in my life of watching boxing when I, was growing up, that any pound for pound fighter fights weak competition. It's supposed to be higher tier competition, and for what Canelo is doing, he's destroying the sport. And he's making a bad influence to encourage probably future up-and-coming fighters that probably look up to him to do the same exact thing. And I just really fear that in the future, those newer fighters that follow in his footsteps will do the same exact thing by ducking their best competition, and they'll still be labeled as pound-for-pound #1 fighters.
Yeah, and that's the influence of social media. There's so much biased narrative. They influence the higher up. So they start naming Canelo as pound for pound #1 when he's clearly not, because he's not even #1 in his own division. But funny you say that, because Ryan Garcia was interviewed and he said that he want to see Canelo fight Charlo. He said he believed Canelo going to knock out Charlo, but that's the main fight he want to see for Canelo Alvarez, right? This is Ryan Garcia speaking. Ryan Garcia want to see his own mentor, his best friend, whatever you want to call him. He want to see him fight Charlo. But Canelo Alvarez just doesn't want to do it. I mean, the hardcores want to see it. The legendary fighters want to see it, from Chavez Sr. to Barrera Morales, his own promoter at the time, former promoter, Oscar De La Hoya, Hopkins. They all want to see it. They all told Canelo, to be great, you got to fight Charlo. And guess what Canelo does? He surrendered a belt and purchased a franchise belt instead, a witness protection belt. And they want to claim this guy's pound for pound #1. So like you said, hopefully the young generation, like Ryan Garcia, doesn't follow in the footsteps, because Ryan, hate him or love him, one thing about Ryan, he is calling out Gervonta. He is saying, hey, I'm going to fight these guys. He promised us if he beat Luke Campbell, which is a tough fight. It's not an easy fight, but he promised us if he beat Luke Campbell, he's going to fight Gervonta. He's going to fight Tio. He's going to fight Devin, right? So we'll see. But hopefully Canelo influence doesn't rub off on the Ryan Garcias of the world and the young talent, because it's already rubbing off on Tio. I see Tio talking and moving the way Canelo is. So I really hope it doesn't really rub off on the younger generation, the younger talent, because that's really going to hurt the sport in a big fashion.
I'm already losing so much respect for Canelo that I actually just wish that Canelo could just get his ass knocked out by Charlo right now, because every single Canelo fan that I've debated within these past couple of weeks about him fighting Charlo, every single one of them says Charlo's not that good. He would get knocked out. He can't have good defense against Canelo. Canelo would just walk him down. Okay, but why didn't he have that same energy when Charlo was his mandatory? And literally, his brother was calling out Canelo at 154 on top of that with Andrade, and he still never even fought either three of them. So that just shows that Canelo, he is straight up ducking his best contemporaries. He does not want to be tested, and he is a pure disgrace to the Mexican heritage. And when he says that he's doing it for his Latinos, who the hell are you to be fighting for Latinos? You're not doing anything for them. If Miguel Cotto did the same thing what Canelo did, he would be hated by Puerto Ricans by tomorrow. Miguel Cotto would never step down. He will always step up. The only thing that I would ever criticize Cotto for is that he should have fought Floyd Mayweather back in his prime. But either way, it's just that you know, if you want to become great, you have to fight the best to be great. And Canelo has proven that he does not want to be great.
Yeah, when it came to the point you brought up about for the Canelo fans, they will come out and say, "Oh, you know, Charlo ain't fought nobody." But it's funny when there's a poll, every single poll, when they ask the fans who you want to see Canelo Alvarez fight next, every single poll, Charlo dominates. You know, there was a poll, there's 100,000 votes on it, and 60,000 out of 5 names. This is not 2 names, it was 5 different names. And 60,000 votes, 60% was Jamal Charlo. 5% was, you know, this guy, 10% was the other guy. But the one that had the most votes, which was 60% out of 5 guys, was Jamal Charlo. But they're going to try to convince you, oh, well, Jamal Charlo ain't fought nobody. Jamal Charlo ain't do this. Jamal Charlo ain't do that. When Canelo Alvarez was asked about Jamal Charlo after the fight, he said, I don't know when the fight is going to happen, and walked out. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't even entertain the idea. When they asked him about Errol Spence, he was like, yeah, I would like to fight Errol Spence. He will talk about it. But when you bring up Charlo, he said, I don't know when that fight going to happen. And he walked out, and you're like, what the hell? It's clear as day. The man gave up his belt. You can't be a real champion and give up your belt. You remember how Riddick Bowe, back in the day when Lennox Lewis became his mandatory, and Riddick Bowe, he didn't want to fight Lennox Lewis. So what he did, because Lennox Lewis became his mandatory, he grabbed that WBC belt and threw it to the trash. That's what Riddick Bowe had to do. And he threw the belt to the trash, man. I kid you not, right? And everybody called him a duck. But when it came to Canelo, he purchased a belt to save face. Because remember, I think 2 years prior to that, the WBC pressured Canelo Alvarez to fight Gennady Golovkin. And Canelo said, hell no. And because they kept pressing him, he ended up vacating the belt. He trashed the belt. But 2 years later, when it came to Charlo, they were like, oh, no, we're going to save face for you. You know what? Canelo made up a French fries belt, a witness protection belt. I mean, that never happened before. I don't know if he's the WBC president or something, but he ordered the organization to make a whole nother belt so he could avoid Charlo, so he could save face. You know what I'm saying? Now he ordered the WBC to avoid Benavidez as well, another Mexican fighter. When it comes to Canelo Alvarez, if you want to say he's the pound-for-pound fighter in the world, okay, that's fine. Canelo Alvarez is the best pound-for-pound fighter against European fighters, not against black fighters, not against Mexican fighters that are undefeated. Because when it came to Charlo, he didn't want to fight Charlo. When it came to an undefeated Benavidez, who also happened to be Mexican, he'd rather fight Avini instead.
What the hell with Canelo? You ain't got no Mexican blood. You got white blood. And he needs to start stepping it up, or else I think it's time for new media to keep exposing him and bring his name down, because you are not the best fighter in the world. You are the biggest ducker in the world.
I think that's a very accurate statement, a harsh statement, but the truth does hurt sometimes. You know what I'm saying? And definitely new media coming out with a pound-for-pound list, awards, and all the above. At the end of the year, we're going to announce it on new media. So we're going to come out with a pound-for-pound list, a legit pound-for-pound list that you could count on. So it's going to be backed up with facts, not feelings. So be on the lookout for that.
How did you choose Lomachenko? Because
I did not choose him. He requested, Canelo requested. So we sent out a vote and we analyzed his history.
Ooh, Canelo and Lomachenko requested?
Absolutely.
Ooh, you just made headlines.
Lomachenko,
You just made headlines.
Lomachenko, top rank, requested. And let me tell you, we analyzed the request. Top of the top.
Define the franchise belt. Can you define it?
The franchise is not a belt. It's not a championship. It's a designation given to elite, unique fighters who carry the industry of the sport of boxing. Canelo Alvarez and Lomachenko are two sensational fighters who carry the industry.
Ask Cameron Duncan, do Top Rank have like columns of fighters? And they say, we don't want this guy fighting the black fighter. We don't want this fighter fighting the Mexican fighter, and so on and so forth.
You're gonna get into the racial stuff, huh?
No, I'm not. I'm asking.
That's a theory there by the greatest matchmaker, probably, in my opinion, ever.
Uh-huh.
And I'm not going to mention his name either, but you know what I'm talking about.
Uh-huh.
And he used to have a thing up on his board, NBF, no black fighters.
Uh-huh.
And when I was taught to bring up a fighter, you know, and again, it's just, he used to say to me, you can go anywhere in the country. And I'm going to leave it at this. I don't want to go into a long discussion because people are people in God's eyes, and we're all the same. He used to say to me, you can go anywhere into a city in America or anywhere in the world and ask a white guy, and he didn't say any other, he didn't say anything about Hispanic, anything. Ask a white guy to throw a jab, and half of them are going to turn backwards and throw it like a girl and everything. Ask any black man on a street corner in any city in the world, and they will snap out a jab in a heartbeat. And I used to laugh. He said, they're just more physically gifted. And he said, and so they have speed, and better to stay away from them. Nothing personal. So I said, okay. And I've lived by that. And, you know, I don't want to sound like some weird guy, but, you know, you're trying to be safe with your guys. And so, yeah, there is a thing about that, you know, but not in a bad way, in a very respectful way, you know, to be careful. So that's all.
The last man even said they doing that to protect them.
Right.
Somebody beat them, but they don't get a belt.
There you go.
The franchise belt is protect them from the big black guys.